Deep Mindfulness Collective. This right here, right now, is the Joy of Being Alive stream coming to you live from Brooklyn, New York, folks. It is unbelievable. I can't believe it. We're here. We're live. We're having a good time. Folks, what is up? What's happening with you? What is new? What's going on? I've missed you. And we're back. Very excited to be here today with you. Thank you so much, everyone, for your patience. I think I'm in the wrong spot. Thank you so much for your patience. Let's make sure everything's working. Hello. Okay, what am I grateful for? I want to say what I'm grateful for. I'm in BK, and I'm grateful for you guys. Boy, did I miss you guys. It's so funny. What a funny life that I live, where I have to. I get to travel, I get to do stuff, I get to go all over, and at the same time, I'm like, I miss my gang. So it's great to be here with you. So where are you, and what are you grateful for? It's so nice to be back. I'll tell you all about my trip. Nice journey. And yeah, okay. So folks, where are you at? What are you grateful for? That's what we'll start out here. I'm very happy to be here. And P.S. tomorrow, we are getting ourselves a new pup, I don't know if you can see this, if you can focus, if it'll, oh wait, maybe it's too bright. That's her. I would put it closer, but I just got out of focus. That's her. We're going to see her very soon. She's going to be a little ball of sunshine. What a sweetie. So I'm excited. I'm excited for her. I'm excited for this. I'm excited for this universe. Chris Ingram, nice to have you back. Nice to be back with you from Guatemala. Grateful for being back on the stream. Me too. I am grateful that you are here as well. Lovely to be here with you. Nick says, hello, darkness. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Refreshed. I am refreshed. I feel refreshed. This is my first post, what is it called? Vaccine trip, and it was very nice. Everyone forgot about the stream now, perhaps, from Karlstad, Sweden. Well, that happens, but life happens too. Nate says, believe it, this is happening right now. I'm on the trail around the lake in the woods near Tampa. And I'm grateful for health and the interstate highway system for my and family, and for you, Jay-Z. Well, thank you very much. It's very kind of you. Very exciting. Lovely. So, folks, what's up? Oh, okay, great. We have a whole thing planned today. I don't have a meditation plan today because today is Freaky Friday, so we're gonna come up with that as we go. But that's the next question: is what kind of meditation do you want to do? What realms do you want to explore? These kind of things. Grateful for being able to slack off at work today. Lovely. I get to slack off at work every day, all the time, because this is my work. Not that it's not plenty of effort, but it's fun. Okay, so folks, what kind of meditation do you want to do today? I can make something up, obviously, but what would you like to do? We could do a heart practice. We could do an awareness practice. We could do some IFS-related stuff. We could just do some regular old deconstruction. Lots of different options. What a world we live in. Beep up, beep up. Chris Ingram says, nice tan. Do I have a tan? I had a sunburn for a minute. I could change the exposure to make it look like I have more of a tan. Oh, look how tan I look. Oh yeah, I got a massive tan. That's just a trick. Okay, so meta meditation. Okay, Chris says meta. I'm on the run, so a moving-based meditation. Okay, no effort. I'm on a roll with that. Non-efforting. Okay, so non-efforting, something that can be done in movement, and a metta or a heart practice or loving kindness or something in that realm. I've already got something sewn up. I just want to see if somebody else throws like a wrench in the gears. Not that you need to, not that you should, but I just want to make sure that someone doesn't come in here and say, I want to meditate on an elephant, which will work with a movement. So that works anyway. You can't win. You can't beat me. I've got a meditation for everything. Okay. Weird. Okay, so I'm just seeing this ad integrating tipping. This ad at the top of, okay, so the streaming service that I'm using is called Streamlabs OBS, sometimes known as Slobs. And right here at the top, there's an advertisement that says, introducing Willow, which is the name of my dog, who I'm going to be introducing to you in just a couple days. This is Willow. It's just funny to be sitting here and be like, wait, what does this say at the top of my screen? Introducing Willow. What? Okay. My running and meditating mantra is effortless. There you go. There you go. Okay, great. So let's do a little meditation, and then afterwards I'm going to describe and talk about my three, I'm backlogged here. I'm talking about 3 different psychedelic experiences. So we're going to be ripping through that. Hopefully that's fun, interesting, and not too much data, because there is a lot of potential data. And I have to do this now because it's already like, we're at the 3rd one. This is like insane. So there is themes that run through. There's parts that don't run through, but hopefully it's not just a 20-minute, 20 or more, 20-hour video explaining this material. Chris Ingram says, I tried to get the meta meditations from the tools thing on their website, but got the 15. Okay, well, let me take a note of that. Okay. I'm going to actually cut a note of this to we have a new digital assistant, so I'm literally going to email this to her before we go anywhere, because, okay, here we go. Just emailing that along. Excellent. Okay, good. So, folks, let's do a little meditation, and then we'll talk about life and things and answer questions, and then I'll give you my psychedelic reports. Oops, drop the bell striker. And, okay, so I'm going to encourage folks to sit in stillness. Oh, we have a few little emojis here. I'm glad it's working, as per always. Excellent. Okay. Nick says, like people complaining about how hard it is when they have kids. 3 months later, immediately planning for another while still complaining. Yeah, that's pretty true. That is true. But, like everything in life, it's got its ups and downs, and there you go. I don't have kids. I've been thinking about it lately. Maybe I want kids. Maybe that's what's up. Okay, so folks, find that nice, comfortable position that you can maintain. We're going to be meditating for, you guessed it, 25 minutes. I think you're going to survive. If that sounds crazy, like it's impossible, trust me, it is not. Okay, so here's what I'd suggest. If you've never done it before, you've never meditated for 25 minutes, I would 100% suggest you try. You'll be surprised how quickly it'll go by and how impactful it'll be. Also, if you decide, okay, yeah, I'm going to try it out, what the hell, not the end of the world, I would encourage you to not change your mind in the middle. This is because all that is just another part of the meditation. We just have to learn how to recycle that back into the meditation. And if you can break through that impulse to break the meditation, that's a strong lesson. That's a strong life lesson to learn. So there's that. So let's see. Okay, great. I see some jokes in the chat. I'll let those stand because those are just hilarious on their own. Okay, so find that nice comfortable position that you can maintain for the duration of the sit. I'm going to encourage you to practice in stillness, meaning no voluntary movements of the body unless you do so slowly, unless you do so mindfully. Wait 30 seconds before you actually make any changes or movements. And also, if you feel any overwhelm, that's really important, is to just feel free to just jump in and just be like, okay, I'm just going to adjust a little bit. You can adjust a lot. Or if you find that it's still overwhelming, you can open the eyes, practice the eyes open. If you find that it's still overwhelming, you can just stop the meditation. That's perfectly valid. Take any final sips of your warm water. And then we'll begin. Okay, let's do it, folks. Beginning by taking a few comfortable deep breaths. Just feeling the body rise and fall. We'll begin by relaxing the body. So physically letting go in the body more than we can even physically feel. There's gross relaxation, relaxing the major muscle groups of the body, but then there's deep relaxation all the way down to the level of the bone. Sometimes this level of letting go can feel scary even. Like if we let go that deeply, what would become of us? And this is part of the process, just letting go. Letting go of the need for the system to function in any particular way. If we're practicing in stillness, some of these details will be easier to notice, like the release of muscle tension even below where we might normally stop paying attention. In a sense, relaxing more than we can even physically feel. If we're practicing in motion, this is simply going to mean letting the body have its own fluidity. Letting the body move on its own without a lot of need to control it. The body knows what to do. And we're going to begin with a non-doing practice. So there's no instruction here. There's simply some things that may happen at times, some possibilities. So sometimes the mind is focused or aware. That may or may not happen at this moment. That's neither good or bad. Sometimes the body relaxes or not, depending on any given moment. Sometimes it feels like we're meditating. Sometimes when engaged in a non-doing, or what's sometimes called a do-nothing practice, it doesn't feel like we're meditating. It feels like the mind is simply wandering, and that's natural. Sometimes the mind will think, plan, create memory, planning, or fantasy. There's no need to stop this, and there's no need to let it go, let it run. Sometimes we will unintentionally or even intentionally intervene, trying to make this moment better. Sometimes there will be expectation. This should be like this. The body or mind wants it to be like that. At this moment, we don't even accept anything. Acceptance may occur, non-acceptance may occur. And we don't need to add anything. Now, sometimes we might, by accident, but nothing needs to be added to this moment. Nothing needs to be taken away. And if we consider that at this point our intentional doing is somewhere hovering around a zero, of course at times the system will do on its own, but that's just natural. So as we proceed, know that there is an advantage to adding as little doing as we can. over-efforting is a major challenge, especially in certain kinds of practice. The less efforting we can apply, the more nuance can come to the surface. So the very subtle amount of efforting that we will add here, again, I'm emphasizing how little we want to add, is simply a sense that there is a being in front of us. It can be extremely vague. It doesn't have to have any details. In fact, we might not even know the details. But this being is deserving of compassion. That is its nature. Noticing if the mind gets caught in trying to specify this being, what it looks like or its shape. The mind cycling through, is it a baby, is it a small animal, is it something I know from my past? And simply let all that go. Just knowing that this being in front of us is deeply deserving of our compassion. That doesn't mean we need to produce compassion. Simply that this being is by its nature deeply deserving. And we don't need to do a lot. We don't need to create a perfect, clear being, because it is this being's nature that it is deserving. In fact, we're almost getting out of the way. Remembering that the less efforting we apply, the more nuance is available to experience. So we're looking at this very subtle experience of there being a being, it being so deserving of our kindness. It's as though it almost draws it from us. Again, we don't have to produce this. We simply know that this being is deserving. this being isn't tiny. Knowing that this moment exists largely in front of us. Meaning it extends out larger than the body. Maybe a great deal larger. Again, not trying to effort, to force, simply knowing. Ah, yes. The subtle direction of this being is in front of, but it's also spatially above and below, left and right. Perhaps even slightly wrapping around. Over time, perhaps beginning to notice that this being is a little bit more like a mist than an object. Maybe it's even a little bit more like a verb, something that is happening, not a thing. This deserving nature of this being is something that's ongoing. And it's ongoing in this mist-like quality, perhaps even all around us. Perhaps it seems stronger in front, but a very subtle expression of it is also to our sides, behind us. And if it's helpful, we're going to add a phrase. Again, noticing if this is helpful or if it's a bit of a hindrance. And the phrase we're going to add is, "May you be peaceful. May you be peaceful. May you be peaceful." Letting the phrase be drawn from you by the deserving nature of this being, this atmosphere. And of course, at times, things that feel disconnected or like they don't fit are going to come into play. Thoughts, emotions, parts of ourselves that feel as though they're not deserving. In other words, in this case, what we might call distraction. And we don't need to change these if they arise, a part of us that doesn't like the process or has expectations. We just simply attend to this being that is deserving, so much so that it draws our phrase, draws our kindness. If we choose not to use a phrase, simply knowing this being all around. May you be peaceful. May you be peaceful. If we're using a phrase, letting it be drawn from us rather than having to produce it ourselves. If the mind gets fixated on this idea, just return to an awareness of this deserving, harmless being. Return to less doing. And knowing that as we move through this process, we might even be able to let go of more of the doing. The process itself might begin to have its own momentum. May you be peaceful. May you be peaceful. If the mind drifts away, re-engaging. Like any relationship, this one takes time. And I'd like you to stay with the practice, staying in stillness. If the eyes are closed, allowing a tiny bit of light to enter the eyes. Moving at the speed that keeps you connected with the practice. Eventually, allowing the eyes to rest on a single point, one that is not a screen or text. Letting the spaciousness of seeing expand the spaciousness of awareness of this kind being, the kind awareness itself. This is simply awareness that is welcoming. Recognizing that the experience of transmitting this wish for peace and receiving it really are one experience. So for a few moments, allowing yourself to be that deserving being, receiving this compassion from all directions. If the system responds by tightening up, becoming a self, reattuned to the deserving being outside of us once more. And recognizing that here we are, sitting with our eyes open like we do much of our day. And seeing that this particular moment is the great teacher. This is showing us how we might bring this practice into every aspect of our life. Okay. So allow yourself to do a little stretch, whatever you need to allow the body to be comfortable. And without having to let go of the practice that we just did, this is key. See if you can write down your experience, even your experience right now, even if it's not about what just happened a few moments ago, but write down what your experience is. Use that digital technology. Or, I think we've got the Discord fixed. Let's see here. If you want to jump on and chat about your experience, that's awesome too. Let's see if I can pull up the link eDoodle. I'm getting used to our new Discord. Here we go. Excellent. Here is our Discord chat. Sometimes it's easier to actually do it by voice because you don't have to, there's like a lot of mechanics that are required to like type it out and stuff. So let me know. We're still working on getting a little alarm system so when somebody jumps in, I can hear it. But right now I'll just have to pay attention. And we'll go from there. Excellent. Excellente. So what was that experience like? What happened and what are you like now? Excellent. Lovely. What a lovely meditation. Ah, Chris. Here you are. Okay. You know, you say you're on Discord, but I'm not seeing you here. Maybe that's because I'm not there yet. No, I don't see you on Discord yet. Okay. When you pop in, I'll go from there. Okay, I'll wait a minute. What else, folks? What else is going on? What happened, and what do you like now? I realize I have an appointment coming up after the stream, so it's tight. So I'm going to have to, I realize reports, bring them in now, give me reports, and then we'll go right to my report from my psychedelic experiences. There's a lot to cover. I hope I'm not in trouble. Hope you guys aren't like, what the heck? Okay. So as people are putting in reports, a little bit of background. I say this every time we talk about the psychedelic material. I am not a proponent of, I'm not against it, but I'm also not a proponent of recreational psychedelic use. The use that I'm referring to is with a guide. It is therapeutic use, and that is, I hopefully am just slightly ahead of the curve of all of this stuff becoming legal therapeutic use. Actually, I believe that, we have Chris and Nate here with us. I believe that in Canada, it's become entirely legal to use these as therapeutic things. So that's the background. Nate, I see that you're on here with us. Hello, Nate. Nate, can you hear me?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you perfectly.
I just did that on a run, and like I mentioned, my mantra recently is effortless. If anybody wants running training, I can tell them how. At any rate, I envisioned it as a kind of as a being at first, but it transitioned to a heartbeat prior to sort of your de-anthropomorphization of it, which is how I feel a lot about religion in general, is we could do a lot better if we would de-anthropomorphize pretty much all of it. But the pulling out part is something that is really hard to practice. Which is why I really appreciate your streams. It's something that I feel like on a daily basis is difficult to sort of achieve. And I like the tools you've given, and I wish there were more prevalent ones in the world that we could all use to sort of learn how to practice, realize, I think is the right word, that there are these, I don't know, feelings. I don't know if that's the right word. You probably have a better word for it, that emanate all the time. And all we have to do is sort of learn how to focus them into something real, for lack of a better word. And so I really appreciate that. And then when you throw in giving it back to yourself at the end, I actually lost my way on my run because I started crying a little bit. But that's real. That's real. And that understanding of how that's real, I think, is one of the keys of what you're doing here. So I'm not sure if I asked any questions here. That was kind of just my experience, and I'd love your feedback.
Yeah, great. Okay, so what I'll say is that a lot of what it is selectively, attuning to something. It's like a radio station. All this stuff, sure, is available, but the system just isn't trained to return to it over and over again. So we're just tuning back into it over and over and over again, letting the system find that channel. And over time, it just gets so used to it that it says, okay, I know exactly where this is. It just gets very, very attuned. The same way, like when you're, the old joke that like someone who's who's working a shower knob, like the difference between icy cold and burning hot is the difference between here and here. And it's basically, at the beginning, it's so impossible. Once you get used to your own shower, it's much simpler. So that is one part. And then the other part is that when we direct it back to the self, or the experience of the self, actually what's interesting is that experience, that kind being, I think that's actually closer to what I would really say is the self, is who we actually are. And usually the self that we say that we think that we are is a much sort of more limited, small version. That's part of why it struggles so much to deal with life, because we try to use a very small version of a self and then try to say, okay, now you're responsible for all these worldly things, whereas actually that kind, spacious awareness has way more capacity to hold our difficulties than, you know, that self that we sort of pointed towards. But notice if when we did that, it sort of to any degree shrunk down or became, you know, more challenging, that's natural. And recognizing that that is the system saying this is what I think the self is, versus the actual self, which is obviously going to include all of those things. Our true self includes all of the things. It has to. Like, what else is there other than this experience that includes everything? That's what the self is. So lovely. Thank you so much for that, Nate. Very appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. I'm going to pop you back into the waiting room here so you can either do that or pop out. Chris, I see you're on the line as well. You are now unmuted, it looks like. Give me a try, just chit chat. It's possible that there's still this issue with your microphone. We had that last time. Okay, I don't hear you, so I think we're going to transition here. Any other reports? Anyone writing their reports down? Feel free to pop those in now. And I'll give it 10 more seconds and then we'll transition. Okay, Chris, it looks like I'm going to pop you back in the waiting room here. It looks like it's a microphone thing. I think Nate's side worked, and then there's that. So I'm going to pop you in the waiting room, and we can go from there. Okay, great. Okay, great. So, folks, what we're going to do then is we're going to let's see here. Hang up there for now. We are going to talk about my last three therapeutic psychedelic experiences right after we hear this report from Nick. See, this is the danger, is that I'm like, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to transition, and then all of a sudden all these reports start flowing in. That's why I said do them early. Okay, Nick says, Nick says,
felt a bit rusty not being here for a few weeks, slacking off not only at work but with meditation as well when there's no threat of being put in meditation detention. Not having the mind in the usual work frenzy mode along with letting go of effort induced lots of strong dullness and sinking. Went a bit in and out of the fog during the entire time, dropping the impulse to sharpen up. But sometimes having a bit clarity in witnessing dullness and also opening my eyes a few times unintended.
Great report. Yeah, that's excellent. So you're getting to a place where you can actually assess your own, like, the challenge levels that are rising, knowing, okay, this is happening. I think that just one thing to be cautious of is if there's judgment in there, which it sounds like it's low, like you know, you're like, okay, this is just what's happening. It just takes time. But also, P.S., in the off days, if you want to rewatch the meditation that we just did, that's great. Actually, this is a curiosity for folks. We're thinking about doing reruns and actually having our streams run again in the evenings. I think that might be a good idea because people on the West Coast in the United States can't watch them. So do them as reruns that run later. That might be a fun idea. But just it can be a good thing on off days when we're not doing a stream, is to just go back and find meditations that work and you know, go from there. It could be lots of fun. Maybe that's what I should do when I can't do a stream, is I do a rerun. That's probably a good idea, better than doing nothing at all. Okay. Chris Ingram says,
I am noticing a similarity between loving kindness, ideal parent figure, and also imagining the best version of yourself and then pointing the mind in that direction. Is the lesson that these qualities are always available and we just use these techniques to access them?
Yeah, I mean, basically the general premise, and this is the direction I come from is more of the internal family systems model, but also really even before that is the non-dual Buddhist model. But basically the premise that this open kind awareness this welcoming awareness is what the true self is, what our true being actually is this kind of awareness. And so we often confuse what our self is, and we say, I think it's this thing that's in the middle that's trying to run the show, and actually it's this much bigger experience. If you look up on our second YouTube channel, let's see. Actually, if somebody else doesn't mind putting it in, youtube.com/deepmindfulness2, number 2, and search for diagram, the word diagram in our playbacks, there is one session where I think you might have been there, but it just diagrams out the relationship of ideal parent, internal family systems, and like a kind of non-dual practice with drawings, which is fun. So that will give you a very clear sort of outlay of those two, that relationship between those. So hopefully that is fun and interesting. So folks, I want to transition now. I'm going to talk a little bit about my psychedelic experiences. Hopefully it's thorough enough that it's interesting, but not so thorough that it's mildly frustrating. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Nick, for putting that link in there. That's very kind of you. So Nick just put the link to the actual video where I described that relationship between those two. And we're thinking about making an edited version of that, so it's a little more easy to consume. Okay, so 3 psychedelic experiences. We're going back several months now. So going back several months, I had this one psychedelic experience. This is guided, obviously with a guide. This is the way that I'm always practicing in these ways. Let's see. The premise here is as follows, that I'm doing a little bit of memory work here. So let's describe 2 journeys ago. So the journey began with MDMA. That's what the medicine they prescribed was at that time. And so usually when the MDMA happens, it's a lot of parts work. I'm actually doing work and having these parts talk to each other. And a lot of what all of these journeys have had in common is that the central character is this, my most vulnerable part, who calls herself Shelley. She is basically, like, in a sense, if there's shame, it's her feeling like she's not good enough. If it's vulnerability, but then it's her. But she also has this incredible power, which is just the strength of vulnerability. If she gets big, and in fact, that's part of what the reason other parts of me keep that part small is because she's so powerful. She's so has this incredible creative energy that's very powerful. So the point of it is that a lot of the process is talking and relating to Shelley. So this 3rd journey, 3 ago, a lot of time is actually spent talking to Shelley, having Shelley have her own voice. And then there's a period of time where it's actually teaching Shelley about meditation, because the thing about parts from an internal family systems perspective is that the parts have a very limited view of the world. This is my perspective, is that they're separate, they're disconnected. And a lot of what we're doing is trying to teach them about connection. And so they don't know about all the things that I've learned about. They just know about their own limited view. So part of it was teaching her meditation and teaching her how to relate to this larger set of material and teaching her that that's safe. That was a large piece of that journey. And I actually had do all parts have names? They sometimes name themselves. So that's part of what I encourage folks to do, is when you find a part, is to ask it and spend time in your practice and ask, do you have a name? Do you have something you'd like me to call you? And to be open to that. And sometimes it'll pick a name and then say, I don't like that name anymore. But that's generally the case. So that journey, the first whole section was really relating to connecting with Shelley, making her feel safe, making her feel like she had a place in the world, creating a relationship between what I call true self, the real me beyond any of these boundaries, and this part, which is Shelley. And that was a lot of the dialogue. A lot of the time that's verbal out loud. A lot of the time that's actually silent. So that was the first part, and then they enter in the second medicine, which is the psilocybin. Now, the psilocybin for me tends to be very bodily and very emotional. So what it did in that journey was it pushed me towards this old sadness that's a somatically held experience that I've had for a very long time, and in fact has been the sort of center of a lot of my meditation practice and the psychedelic therapeutic journeys that I've been on. It's sort of been the center as this old, what feels like unlimited pool of sadness. And so what I typically do is I just try to allow it to be there, and I just like, just feel the pain to the nth degree. And it's really like, it feels existential. And I think that what I've realized over time is partially an issue that, and this is, I don't think I realized this then, but I realize this now. Part of the issue, this is later journey, so forgive me for being a little non-linear, but it's just easier to get a better perspective for me, is that in a way it's like this pain is its own like burden, and it feels like trying to shove that burden onto Shelley, trying to have her feel this emotion. And that was something that came up in this most recent journey number, let's say 1, most recent, is that why on earth would I come up, or something inside me would come up with this idea that in order to feel the greatest pain that I've ever experienced, I'm going to force it through the tiny little vulnerable part that is Shelley. And it's like, of course that feels like terrifying and violent and impossible and these kind of things. So it's like, oh, that's very interesting. So that's, didn't realize this at the time, but I think that's what was happening, is feeling that emotion. So what happened was, for the majority of the experience, I was really, really just feeling that emotion really intensely, just firsthand, just like the emotion. And it was intense and it was hard. And then the guide added a third medicine, which is the first time they've ever done that. But there was, we planned this out and this was called for. And so they added an amount of intramuscular ketamine that, blasts you off. There's, self breaks down. You're just sort of a kaleidoscope of sensations that are just like tumbling into different formations, similar to various parts of meditation. And there was a moment in there where I said, oh, that's different than things I've experienced in meditation. There's one moment it's like, oh, that's different. That is not the same thing I've experienced in many meditations, which is something that's a theme that runs through all of this, which is I've had deeper experiences in meditation than I ever have had in any of these psychedelic places. So one moment popped up that was different, but mostly it was material I was familiar with, and sort of, you blast away and then you come back. And in that coming back, as you start to reform, you can start to, shape a relationship with these various parts. And I was connecting with, this pain. And as the system reformed and sort of seeing like, how is it that I relate to this, and just feeling the pain. And then a bunch of the journey was just like, and honestly, so I usually don't talk about this because it's like, it's very personal and embarrassing, but there's times when I just fully believe in a God. fully am like, I believe. There's times when I just don't, and I feel very like, polyamorous, or like very flexible in that way. I'm like, sometimes I believe, sometimes I don't, which is funny because people typically are like, no, you have to be on one side or the other, which is, I never realized how silly it was until I got to a place where I don't really care. But during this journey, there was very much this conversation related to God. And so at some point I was just praying, like, please either help me feel the pain, help the pain go away, help me, like, whatever it is. I don't know what it is, but I have no idea where to go. I have no idea what the path is. I'm like fully like weeping. I was like, please help, like something, anything. And it was just like feeling the pain super intense. And I talk about it as firsthand, just, it's like right here in your face, like pushing pain. And just in like endless depth of sadness. Definitely feels like older than me. I feel like it's like generational, like I'm holding stuff from other generations. And then something broke, and basically what it was, the system, it was so painful for so long, the system was like, well, why don't we do this? And just moved into kind awareness, which is, that's one of the things is on the journey, sometimes you don't have the same meditation skills you have off the journey. So in this journey, I just realized I might be talking about 4 different experiences now. There might be 4 journeys in here. Okay, anyway. So I basically hung out with that experience from this more spacious place. And suddenly it was just like the pain, the thing that was so painful, was the most relieving thing in the world. Is just from that, say, third person, from the kind awareness, was just like exquisite. I mean, it's honestly, it's the most pleasurable experience I've ever had in my life. And I say that very literally, like compared to any other thing, was feeling that pain from the third person, perspective. And I was like, this is it. This is the answer, is like what it came up to. And it was just so incredibly relieving. And then so for just hours at the end, it was just like, waves of just incredible satisfaction, but the satisfaction was the sadness, was feeling it from the perspective of the kind awareness. Excellent, good information. And I believe it's possible I've already talked about this journey. I'm not sure, but so that's how that journey went on and went through. The next journey was one where I went in. It's very similar structure, but there was no ketamine at any point, and similar sort of what happened in the experience. But then when the psilocybin kicked in and it was just the pain, I asked the guide. I was like, should I allow my awareness to get big and make the pain not hurt, or should I just not interfere at all? And the guide said, don't interfere. Just don't interfere. And I was like, okay, if you say so. And so it was just 4+ hours of just firsthand nose on the grindstone, like just pain. And at some point I was like, could I open up and experience this as the kind awareness? Like, could I do that? Does that still work? And I did that, and suddenly the pain like dropped, and it was just the same sort of like wonderful feeling thing. And I was like, okay, well, but in this journey, I've made the decision that I'm not going to interfere. And so just sitting there, not interfering, with waves of like, I just couldn't believe how much it hurt. It's like, ow, 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 ow. So that was the experience. And I came out of that really kind of like, oh, like I was, sometimes you come out and you're glowing and things are lovely. Sometimes you come out and it's just not the case. Sometimes you come out and you're just like, whoa. And so for weeks I was just like, oh, bad feeling, like overwhelmed, whatever. And I haven't gotten into it. I'll talk about it at some point, but I have life circumstances, like many people do, that are really, really difficult, really, really challenging. So I just am flipping through here, and someone said, that's how I felt when Iron Man died. I'm with you. I'm with you. That was a tough moment for all of us. I'm trying to like go back so I can get all the comments, but I'll get these later. Okay, here we go. So the point is that that's what that journey was like. So I went into the next journey. So now we're now getting, so I apologize, I was misnumbered here. 2 journeys ago. Okay, so we just went through 2. We went through the third one. 2 journeys ago was now a group journey. I'd never done a group journey before. And there was a set of circumstances that made it not an ideal situation, which was as much my fault as anyone's. So here's the set of situations. I went into the journey, basically processing some really intense personal stuff, hoping this would help process through that. Okay, so a little bit of expectation, not ideal, but that's what, I really wanted to work through this thing. Okay, that happens, not the end of the world. I also went in, and because I sort of didn't prepare to go in so much, I was just sort of like plopped in. You want to prepare as much as you can, make life as simple as possible leading up to, but it was okay. But the people that were guiding also said, hey, this is Yana. She's actually going to be helping, with meditation here. He's going to be teaching people meditation. And isn't that lovely? So I was like, yeah. And they said, at some point, they're like, okay, before we start the journey, we're going to have you guide a meditation. Great, no problem. I can easily like do that and then let go and like really be a participant. But what happened was, scheduling wise or something, it just got messed up and they never went into that. So I was sort of waiting for the meditation to start, waiting to get going, and I'm going to be a teacher for a minute and then shut it down. And they go ahead, they pass out the medicine, everyone gets the medicine, I'm waiting, I take the medicine, I'm okay, cool, waiting. It's probably not gonna happen. Maybe I'm gonna, and I'm sort of like teacher mode on and managing, and then also like, okay, I should let go, and teacher mode, and I got this sense of the right way to approach the pain is to have it be held in the kind awareness. This is the right thing to do. It's more compassionate. This would be a better mode than just letting the pain be there because it was too painful. It's more compassionate to open it up. And so that was my decision. So that's the whole setup. I'm in this group journey. I take the medicine, take a large amount of, it's just psilocybin this time. And for the first, let's say, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours even, it was just like lovely and blissful. And I decided to not move a centimeter, even though it was really hot. I had a lot of layers on to begin with, and it got hotter and hotter. Even though like not moving creates a lot of pain in the body, I was just metabolizing everything that was happening. And I was just like, yeah, this is great. Just like holding it in kind awareness. It was like so lovely, like wonderful, wonderful. And at some point, it just felt like it all started to speed up, moving towards the peak of the experience of the medicine. And the speeding up was like more pain, more frequently, more difficulty, more. And the mind was like, what about this? And what about this? And each time I'd say, hey, here's a spacious experience. Notice like it just dissolves. And each one of these pieces of pain just comes and goes away. Like, don't worry about it so much. And that part was like, no, 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 no. And it kept like saying, no, like something's wrong, something's wrong. And I was like, it's okay. And I was just sort of trying to be there with it but in a way sort of like push it aside. That's, I think, what the downside was. And at some point the pain comes fully into its experience, to full intensity. And this part that was trying to manage that and being like worried and what about this and etc., which I call Yanni, how I don't really deal with that much except as like almost a secondary character to Shelley, although that changed over time. Yanni comes up and is like, no, and smashes down the pain, the sadness, and is like, this is over, and shut off the hallucination and shut off the medicine like 97%. And I was like, I had been given 5 grams of high potency, psilocybin, and it shut off. It was turned off completely, 100%. So I was, in this process, going through, et cetera, and it was like, and the whole thing was off. And I was like, this is very weird, because I can tell there's all this, medicine in my body, but this part is like, we are not feeling this at all. I was like, okay. And it felt sort of terrible because it felt like I needed to feel the pain, but I couldn't feel the pain. So it was this like really like grinding, like awful experience. Again, awful relative. It was still very fruitful in the end. So I got up and was like, well, I guess I'll use the bathroom, and went to the bathroom, and so I was sitting there and I was talking to the guides, and I was like, this is over. Like, there's nothing, I don't know what else to say. It's like, it's off, it's over. And then it got into this tough place for me because it was this thing of like, I have to be a teacher. I have to hold it together. Some sound. I have to hold it together. And these are, people are peers rather than their guides, and I can let go. And so there's a sense of I kind of have to, like, now that this is over, like I've got to pull my act together and sort of get the pieces in order. And it felt really yucky. It basically just felt like the most clear, foregrounded experience of repression that I've ever felt. Usually repression is sort of subtle in the background or whatever, but it's like I saw all of the difficulty, and this part just went boom and like pushed it into like not being so conscious, but I could still feel this pressure. And so it was really yucky coming out of that experience. Worse than the last one. The last one was just like pain and sadness, which was like doable. This was like sadness, but I couldn't feel it. And I was like, oh my God. Like, it was just like every time I'd almost feel it, it'd be like, and like push it down again. So that was a second to last journey, which leads us to between the second to last, which is months ago, and this most recent one, which was last week. It was a lot about integration, a lot about just like letting go of any thing of progress, and just like connecting with people, getting friends, going outdoors, anything I could do to just have myself, feel more connected, feel more at peace, whatever that was. I had an injury I was doing kettlebells, and I had this neck injury, which I'm hopefully going to be resolved soon enough. And so I was just like, it was just processing. And it actually I was just looking for normal rather than just like in some weird crunchy place. So when the opportunity came up to work with somebody who does 5-MeO-DMT, I was like, yes, I would like to do that, largely because they talk about it as like the God particle, but basically what it is it's such a strong intervention that you can't control. There's no control possible. You're just pushed out past, any level of sort of you being there, self being there, is what they describe. So I went to work with this person. They're in California. I went to work with them, and the journeys are the experiences are short because they last about 20 minutes. So you can do several rounds. So I did several rounds. The first round. This is not to scare anybody because, it's interesting because it was surprisingly less scary than I thought. Like, whatever, I feel like I'm so used to this material from meditation. So the first round, they gave you a very low dose just so you can be like, okay, this is sort of like what it's like a little bit, just to get into the groove. Took a puff off of this not inhaler, like a cigarette, a e-cigarette kind of thing. Took it in, and then I was like, oh yeah, this seems familiar. And then suddenly it was very disorienting. So I felt nauseous, which is kind of similar to what happened for me in the Dark Knight material. And so I suddenly felt nauseous, and I was like, ugh, like, I think I'm going to throw up. And it wasn't like the medicine made me throw up. It was just like, I have an option right now whether to throw up or not. I'd just been drinking water the whole day. I hadn't eaten anything. So I was like, well, I guess that's what I'm doing. So I was like, oh, give me a minute. And so I kind of wander over to the woods for a minute because we're doing the whole thing outdoors. And I throw up a little bit, and I'm like, okay, I just feel better. And then I go back, and I'm like, okay, so should we slowly ramp up? And is that the case? Or, because it seems like the system's holding on in some way. He's like, no, we should just go full bore, full intensity, because it's just going to be pain and holding on until it pushes you through the other side. So I was like, okay. So the way that this medicine works is that there's different, what am I calling them? They're not inhalers, vapes, different strength vapes. So there was the number 8 and number 4. And number 4 is like the big guns. He's like, let's just go straight for the number 4. You're going to do it, once. And if you're still there, you're going to try to inhale again afterwards. So I was like, okay. So I do a big puff. I still have enough wherewithal. I do another big puff from the inhaler from the number 4 and go in, but it's familiar territory. I've been here in meditation, etc. There's sort of not so much a body. It's actually very similar to what I'm experiencing in this moment. There's not a body. There's just a vague sense of maybe some stimuli that's the body. It's sort of more of like a vague, spacious experience, and some very faint sense of a self floating in that atmosphere. And I hung out with that, and I remember a number of people had said something basically like, if you get to the edge of a cliff and you're not sure what else there is, just die. Just go ahead and die. So I was like, okay, well, that's an interesting, take. So that's what I was trying to do. I was like, I was trying to sit there, trying to die, and etc. So, and it just, I slowly came out of that medication, and the guide had said, you're going to do your first big round, then you're going to come out, and you're going to kind of come back to ground level, and then we'll go again. So that was expected. A little bit of background here. So before this session, before and after this session, I did IFS. So here's a little bit background of what happened before the session. So before the session, I was hanging out with Shelly and Yanni, who's her sort of big brother, who, when there's shame experiences, Yanni's being like, you shouldn't exist, Shelly, stop existing, you're too vulnerable, etc. So that's when they have a bad relationship. But they become friends through various journeys, and so they've got a pretty good relationship. What I realized at some point, though, was that there was Shelly trying to be forced to feel this intense sadness. And I was like, where is the force coming from? And I realized it was Yanni pushing it down, basically saying, we can't feel this, so you feel it, most vulnerable part, which is weird, but whatever. So it actually was this pushing thing back and forth where if Shelly didn't want to feel it, she'd be like, get away, I don't want to feel this. And Yanni would think he had to feel it. And if Yanni didn't want to feel it, he'd push it down on Shelly because, to get away. So it was just these different parts being like, we can't feel this pain. So at some point that opened up, and I gave it a little more space, and it was more like a volleyball match. And Shelly was fully ready to let it go. She's like, I'm free, let it go. And she's like, nope, don't want it. And so it felt like a burden that Yanni had to carry. So then it became this back and forth between the two, sort of, and more so that Yanni was trying to figure out, how do I hold this pain? Again, not knowing that I could hold the pain and that we could hold it in the larger system. So that's the precursor to the, oh wait, there's one more sweet little part, is that I was hanging out with Yanni, and Yanni would get very scared and be like, oh my God, something's wrong, in the world, I'm worried. And so I'd be like, okay, whenever that happens, just hold on to me really tight. And Yanni would grab onto my side and be like, holding on so tight. He's like, go ahead, hold on as tight as you can, hold on. And I would be there with Yanni while he felt this pain or this fear. Fear is sort of more of Yanni's flavor than sadness. So feel, squeeze, and he'd be like, okay. And then he'd be tired and have need to rest. So I just hold him, and then, fear, whatever. It just keep coming in waves, and I just be like, just hold on. And at some point, my IFS therapist mentioned like a kangaroo, like it's like a stuffed animal with a kangaroo sort of feeling, like this vibe between me and Yanni. And Yanni really liked that idea and immediately put on a kangaroo pajama. I got to make sure. Okay, I have 15 minutes. Put on kangaroo pajamas with like a little kangaroo like in the pouch, and I realized like what happened was the fear was the little kangaroo in Yanni's little pouch, and that the what's it called? And part of what my job was to be very loving to Yanni rather than being like, stop what you're doing, like you're doing something wrong. Just be like very kind and loving, be like, oh, I see what you're doing. Hug me, hold me close when that's a problem. And then Yanni would have this little fear in its little pouch, and whenever it'd be scared, we'd want to tear it up, and you got to be kind and loving to that little fear. So that's the background to the journey. All of that same stuff comes up in the process with this guide. A lot of trauma stuff sort of coming to the surface, like why would my father treat me the way that he did, which was very violent and abusive in a just variety of ways, and somehow something clicked in that same way of like being kind to Yanni, realizing like, oh, my dad was like, he was a little kid in like Nazi occupied Poland, like watching Nazis walk around, and his family was Jewish, like it's like, and his father was Jewish and had left, and his mother was anti-Semitic, and like there was bombs in like the room, like there was bombs around, like live bombs that hadn't gone off like in the streets and stuff. And so I was like, man, like, okay, he's like a little kid too. So there's a lot of compassion for him. And then what I found was that Yanni had this little piece of like, no, if it's not my dad, then it's his parents or his parents. And there's this need to have this one little thing, like someone's wrong. And so as I hung out with that, it just got smaller and smaller and smaller until it was like this super fine grain, experience of just this like little pinprick of something that needs to be fixed. And that was the round one, and I wept, and it was intense, but it all happened in the course of like 20 minutes. But I said to the guy, I was like, look, I couldn't break through. I still was in the normal human realm. So he's like, well, we have pipe, 8 and 4, they're going down in gauge. So it's like they're getting bigger. So there's pipe 8, which is light, pipe 4, which is the big one. We also have pipe 2, and he like pulls out this other vape, and I'm like, So he's like, okay, we're gonna do this one this time. I was like, okay. So I do that one, and I just go in, and there's just this big feeling of like, at some point I start mumbling, I don't know how to die. And so all of a sudden I like feel a pipe get put in my mouth again, and I'm like, okay, to go back in. And ultimately, it was sort of the same material, just the same. I was still there. There wasn't like the sense of breaking through to some other side or whatever, which is not uncommon at the beginning with this type of medicine. And I came out, and the guy was like, okay, so how are you? How do you feel? And the thing that stuck with me the most was this experience that part of me just never takes a break, ever. That I'm either working on a project and it's like got to be really good, or I'm not working on that project and I'm like thinking about it, or I'm avoiding doing anything, and I call that taking a break. And I'm like watching a movie, and I'm like, okay, this better be really interesting because it's got to help me escape from all these challenges. And I was like, man, the system is always like teeth into something. And this is, as a meditation teacher, like ideally this would be something that would not be the case, obviously. But I was just noticing there was this subtle way in which my system will be toothed into something all the time. And I'm just sitting there out in nature, and I was just like, God, I just never take a break. And that was like, in a way, like the big takeaway, at least for whatever it was at that time. Like that's what it was. And I was just like, I never take a break. I never stop. Even with the, meditation, even with the, psychedelics, it's always like, I've got to, I want to grow. And I just like sat there, and I was like, okay, this is so beautiful. And I just sat there in nature, and it was just lovely. Got a nice sunburn. It was nice. Because during the journey, which was longer than I think he expected, the sun came over the trees, and it was like, so it was lovely. And then I spent the rest of the week just being like, okay, I'm taking a break. This is just like what a break feels like. And I just realized it was so lovely, because I just realized I just don't take a break ever. The system doesn't know how to do that. So I think that's pretty much it, but I want to get into people's comments and questions. The problem is their comments are now wildly out of order. How dare you? But I do want to get to these. Nate mentioned something about reruns. Master Gamer 1967 says that's how I felt when Iron Man died. Exactly. Let's read these out loud so that we can I can hear what people are saying. I can see what people are saying. Okay, Nick's comment is, where are we going here? Nick, here we are. Nick's comment is,
felt a bit schizophrenic when I once had one part naming I self, but I guess that's the normal human condition anyway without being aware of it. Schizophrenia light.
Yeah, I mean, schizophrenia light is pretty much, yeah, that's, I think schizophrenia and those kind of real breaks are when there's no way to break from any particular part. It's the part fully takes over. It has absolutely no connection outside of itself. And even then, they say that, it's possible. Chris, you asked, how do I get into those psychedelic journeys? Basically, because it's still, okay, a couple ways. There are legal ketamine clinics in the United States. In Canada, and there are a few places that recently legalized therapeutic use. I think Oakland is one, Denver, or maybe Colorado in general. I got you check, but see who just recently legalized them. They're probably going to have therapists who are already doing this work. Then you can go to, in Canada, also all of Canada, and then you can also go to your local psychedelic gatherings. They have these all over. Every city is going to have these psychedelic gatherings. And people are, there's going to be a standoffish nature, but people also do want to share. So you basically, if you become known to those communities, you're likely going to, over time, find the answers that you're looking for. I would, again, go back to, this is me personally, my general tendency is to encourage folks to look at someone who can do this from a therapeutic point of view, rather than just a, maybe even just a purely spiritual point of view or a purely recreational point of view. I would hire, as far as for healing, I would create the hierarchy from, therapeutic, purely spiritual, and then recreational. I don't necessarily recommend that at all. Nick says, known a map trained guide, I suppose. Oh no, yeah, you're answering that. No, a map trained guide, I suppose. So, Exalted says the following.
So does ketamine remove your sense of self? And also, how does that work if you already kinda don't have one in the first place?
It didn't remove, keep in mind that the sense of self it is just the same material, it's just sense data. So it's like, does it remove your sensations in your hands? Well, no, but it does make it less like hand-like. It just makes it more like, kaleidoscopic and everything sort of mashing together. I've had the experience on ketamine, and this is the journey that I was describing before, where it all feels like you're in a tumbler dryer and all of the senses are just sort of smashing together in different forms and different shapes. And there's some point when I was like, is there any difference between me and Raquel? Like, are those different things? And I was like, is Raquel just an idea? Is this how it's always been? These kind of thoughts that are trying to create order out of what's happening there. Nick says, in related to ketamine, it's a dissociative, so it can kind of dissolve it. Also, I just want to mention, do not use ketamine recreationally, period. It is fully addictive, fully bad idea. I've fully seen people get completely addicted to ketamine. Unlike the other ones that don't have that quality, ketamine 100% does. So really, I would strongly recommend not avoiding that and just generally getting it, guided by other folks. Let's see here. Exalted says,
you said you have a vague sense of a self right now. Is that a reduced version of the same self, ego, most people feel they have, or do you mean some other kind of self?
Yeah, I think that the experience of the self is kind of the same for everybody, but it comes with less of a sense that is the one true reality. The sense of a self is a sort of gravitational pull that says that this is the perspective, and this perspective is the one that is real and everything is arranged around this central experience of me, etc. So I can detect the system doing that, but it's much more sort of, it's comical, and it's like, okay, yeah, sure, I see you, and but that's the case, and we all have parts. So these parts are, each part typically takes on the seat of the self at any given point. When it takes over, it's like, oh no, I'm the self. So anytime, if you have a sense of you or you that's experiencing this right now, that is a self, it's a part saying that it is the system. But we mentioned this in the meditation today, that, how is it possible, like the self sees itself, or any self sees itself as being separate. Well, there's me and then there's the world. But actually, there's nothing but our perception, and everything that is within that realm, of course, that's what we would more, seriously call the self. That's all of these things, all of the material all together in this sort of atmosphere of sense data. Of course, what else would the self be but all of it? So that's a more accurate, from my perspective, sense of the self. Have you tried lucid dreaming? I've done a little bit of lucid dreaming. Exactly, lucid waking. I've done a little bit of lucid dreaming. I've tried to train myself a tiny bit. The best things that I recommend for that, and this is when I work with students, rather than focusing on lucid dreaming, is meditating in your sleep, which can be really helpful in parallel with lucid dreaming. So the way that you learn to meditate in your sleep is that you, every time there's sleep, anytime the system is taking a nap or going to sleep or any of these things, what you'll do is you will meditate into that, usually like a concentration practice or something. You just meditate until you fall asleep, and then as soon as you wake up in the middle of the night, you go back into meditation. And if you get up to use the bathroom and then come back down, you again meditate until you fall asleep. And when you wake up in the morning and the alarm goes off, you click the alarm, you go back into meditation, and then you get up from there. So basically, in a sense, any sleep chunk is bracketed by meditation. And what starts to happen is the mind starts to bring those in further and further, to the point where you'll train the system to be able to meditate when you half wake up in a dream. And you'll be in a dream. And I have a student who I used to work with who was good at lucid dreaming, and he would learn to meditate in his dreams, and he would just go to these like really, really intense, deep places. So that's quite lovely, quite wonderful. So folks, thank you so much for being here. This has been a quadruple psychedelic report video. Hopefully that was very fun, interesting, and exciting, and hopefully I'll get to share more with you coming very soon. Thank you everyone for joining us. Now let's hear a little lovely, delightful outro music. P.S. We'll be back here Monday with a puppy. Maybe it'll be chewing at my feet. Maybe it will be a giant nuisance. Maybe it'll be really fun. But who knows? Okay, folks, as always, in this very moment, take just a second to once again connect with that spacious, open, kind awareness, that being that is deserving of your kindness. And know that reconnecting with that is something that's available at any point all throughout our day. Lovely, as always. Great to be here with you all. Such a fun time. As always, take care of each other. Have fun. Practice well. And we'll see you all very, very soon. Bye.